Today on CityCast Boise, librarians are the cool kids now, the pesticide lobby seems to be working hard at the State House, and why foodies have plenty to chew on this week. We're catching up on what's been trending with Boise State Public Radio's George Prentice. It's Friday, January 26th. I'm Frankie Barnhill, and this is what Boise's talking about. George, thanks for being here. We got so much to cover today. How are you doing so far?
I'm doing well. Hi, and thanks for the invite.
Of course. Always good to have you. So I want to dig into this survey that came out from Boise State University. It's the 9th year of this statewide survey that asks all kinds of questions about public policy. And one of the main questions that they asked that they've been tracking over 9 years that is different this year is, do Idahoans feel like the state is on the right track or off the right track? And for the first time, more Idahoans than in previous years feel that the state is on the wrong track. So that's kind of the main headline. I was just wondering, what stands out to you about this survey's results, particularly when you think about Boise and the Treasure Valley and how that fits into this bigger statewide picture?
So interesting, because I think exactly to that graph, I think what really jumps out to me is the trend of the graph, right? Mm-hmm. It is now below water, if you will. So wrong track is now over right track. But when you look at the trend, this has been heading in that direction for a while. So I think a fair amount of people might say, well, tell me something I don't know. But to your question in regards to the Treasure Valley and Boise in particular, I find this very interesting in that this was taken in November. This was taken at a time of a general election when a lot of people in Boise were engaged.
Right.
And we had a 40% plus voter turnout. So I'm not here to tell the analysts how to do their job or what hey, could you give me a separate chapter? But I would love to have a subchapter on Boise, right track,
I would
wrong
too.
track.
I would
because
too.
I think the general election flips this number because you had an incumbent that won election, and that's basically a right track over wrong track. It's usually about the incumbent.
Incumbent Mayor McLean you're talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and her the candidates for council that supported her and that she supported. So I think that's really interesting. But can I just talk for a second about this survey? Because it's been coming out for a number of years, and I'm really wonky. I think you might be too. We love this stuff, but I'm really getting tired of analysis for analysts. I think there's so much in here and so many stories to be told that's in here, but where are the faces and the voices? And if this were to be published, i.e. released and talked about, I would love to have seen a little thumbnail photograph or a quote from so-and-so.
Right.
Bring this to my kitchen table. You've got to put a face and a voice to this. You and I have talked about this for years, but I hate to see a great opportunity lost. And my sense is a week from now, not too many people are going to be talking about this survey.
You mentioned kind of kitchen table topics, something that we are very interested in, and our listeners are certainly interested in, like what actually affects you day to day.
Cost of living, yeah.
Totally. As well as, one of the things that really stood out, of course, and is timely given where the legislature is spending a lot of its time, or at least some people in the legislature are spending their time throwing stones at libraries and librarians. And hey, guess what? According to this survey, 69% of those surveyed across the state trust public libraries and librarians to choose the books that are made available to them. So I feel like, what does this say to you about hyper-local politics? Because nothing is more hyper-local than like a local library board election, which we've talked about a lot in the last year or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have thought for a while that this is a losing issue for Republicans and even conservatives. It's a very particular issue. It is, quite frankly, demonizing librarians. But But this is nowhere near the list of issues that folks want to be dealt with. The legislation that's coming out of the legislature so far has nothing to do with these priorities.
Right. Improving education, making more affordable housing, better
Yeah,
jobs. Yeah.
right. Yeah, where's the jobs bill? I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, where's the housing? Where's the bill on public transportation?
Right.
I know that there's nothing new there, but this kind of validates that. But yeah, we are in the midst of, and I think a lot of people knew it was going to be this way, a culture war at the Capitol.
Election year. We've been saying it and we'll continue
Right.
to say it. Yes. Another big headline on a topic that is very controversial and that we've talked about a lot is, of course, the incredibly draconian abortion laws, abortion bans in Idaho. And, more than 50% apparently in this statewide survey want to see our abortion ban become less restrictive. Now, there's, degrees of what kind of less restrictive exactly, but 57% don't like the bans that are on the books right now, which could, again, in an election year, maybe bite some conservatives in the butt, depending on the district. I mean, in Boise, we saw Planned Parenthood endorsed candidates win this fall, didn't we?
We did. I'm really surprised that there was not a really strong effort to put an abortion initiative on this year's ballot. That is strategy in a number of battleground states across the U.S.
Yeah.
because it's a losing battle.
Even in just as conservative states, for many
That's
examples.
right.
Yeah.
And voters actually will show up. Maybe they weren't even going to go to the polls, but they'll show up for this issue. I'm not saying everyone agrees on reproductive rights, but clearly a lot of people do want to weigh in on this. So it will be very interesting to see the states that are in play in the November election that have a reproductive rights initiative on a ballot. Idaho won't be one of them.
Maybe a missed opportunity. Yeah.
I don't think Joe Biden would necessarily win Idaho, but I think it would have some sway in the race for the Idaho House and Senate because there are a number of legislators over in that building who are there who won by, a couple dozen votes. Reproductive rights, clearly, a lot of moderates are saying, hey, it's a bridge too far here.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. I would love to see a Treasure Valley specific survey. I know that Boise State in the past has done the Treasure Valley surveys. I think the last one was in 2021. And I'm especially be interested, in the statewide one, they asked about newcomers to the state and their political affiliation or how they identify themselves politically. And this is not a surprise that statewide, that within the last 10 years, 46% of newcomers are Republicans compared to 35% who identify or who moved here 10 years ago. So more than 10 years ago. So newcomers are much more likely to be Republican than people who've been here for longer. But I want to see those Boise specific numbers.
Yeah, and especially I'm more curious actually about those who consider themselves independents because I've always thought that was the growing number. Maybe the migration from Orange County in California maybe puts those folks in the GOP column. But I mean, you and I have talked about this in a while. The growing number are those folks who are independent and or undeclared.
Yeah. But could indicate that becoming more and more partisan statewide.
Yeah, they're finding their tribe. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. We are in the third week of the legislative session. It's an election year, saying it again and again and again. They are trying to wrap up by March 22nd as a reminder to listeners. So we're like a little less than a third done. And there's been already plenty of pretty lame and tiresome culture war stuff happening so far. So what's going under the radar in your opinion, or what are you noticing that maybe isn't getting a lot of attention yet?
Well, a couple things that aren't getting attention. I'd actually like to bring a couple of measures to our listeners' attention. One, which I found really interesting, is a bill that would limit Idaho's public health districts. This bill would change the definition of public health districts and their responsibility. It it basically would say their oversight would only be for quote what is necessary or reasonable, but it would also take out oversight on preventative health measures, which is a lot of what public health districts
Yeah.
do.
What are they going to do without that? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I found that to be really interesting, and I'm going to be tracking that one. And then something that popped up just the other day, and this is a new bill that was introduced this week that basically protects the use of pesticides in Idaho agriculture. We know that there have been efforts from California in particular to really call out manufacturers of pesticides, especially in their warning labels and just their responsibility to the public. And of course, these manufacturers don't just manufacture for California. So indeed,
Right.
these are products that are used in Idaho. As a matter of fact, used all over Idaho. So this bill would basically say, don't tell us how to put labels on our pesticides. It's like, hold it, what? Are you kidding me? We're talking about consumer protection here, right?
Yeah.
So it is, it's a measure to protect the pesticides that Idaho farmers and ranchers rely upon. And it has surfaced in the Senate Commerce Committee. And it's one of those, I don't know, wonky bills that probably a lot of people wouldn't catch. But it's like, hold it, what is this? This has lobbyists, all over it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This sounds like old school kind of
Yeah.
bill, honestly, because there have been so many people. I mean, the crunchy true right wing pipeline that is talked about a lot on the internet. It's not just a liberal issue to care about, what pesticides are on our food or going into our system now. Like people across the political spectrum care about this a lot.
And it's in the interests of Idaho agriculture to do the right thing so that someday the EPA doesn't shut you down.
Right.
So yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you brought those to our attention. What about just like in general, kind of the vibe, the way that things are conducted, the people's business and how it's been conducted so far this session? Is there anything besides the fact that clearly, these culture war issues that are very attached to, once again, election year, are coming to the surface? Anything else that you've been seeing in committees?
Yes. So we have seen some pretty high profile events, public testimony on, library bills, guns in
Right.
schools,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But what I have heard, and it is a troubling trend, what I have heard from a number of chairmen and chairwomen of these committees, the people who basically run the show, I keep hearing the phrase, I'm going to take a personal privilege at the beginning of a public hearing. And they've been saying, we're going to limit public testimony until, 10 a.m. or 10:30. Now, in years past, if you can't get it done that day, it goes to a second day or a third day, right? No more. They're limiting public testimony. So what does that mean? That means if you, as a citizen, it's pretty difficult to drive to the Capitol, find a parking place, walk in there at 8 a.m. and put your name on a clipboard to make sure that you've got, your 2 minutes to talk about something. Well, who knows how to navigate that better than anyone? Lobbyists, right? So,
Right, of course.
yeah,
This is their job.
Yeah, I just think it's really troubling. So I heard Thursday morning there in an education committee hearing on a pretty important bill in regards to charter schools in Idaho, and the public hearing was just beginning, and the chairperson said, "I'm going to take a personal privilege. We're going to cut off at 10:30."
Did they give an explanation for why?
Because we quote unquote have to be on the floor. No, they'll just
Sure,
say
sure,
whatever. And because I keep hearing this is clearly, this is an MO. This is not coincidence. This is by design. This is to have less public input.
Ah, that is
Yeah.
so frustrating. And I wonder if it's short-sighted on these chair people's part, perhaps.
Not at all. I think it's by design. I think
Mm,
it's clearly to push things through. Let's take a look at this bill, this guns in school bill
hmm.
that came out this week. Nearly every, with the exception of the NRA lobbyists, nearly everyone who testified said absolutely not, and it sailed through the committee. It sailed through the committee. So, yeah, does the input matter? Well, maybe not.
Mm. Well, that's depressing. So I'm going to try and pivot hard right or hard left, who knows, hard one way to my kitchen table and to my stomach, which is always interested in what food is getting acknowledged by a national scene around from Boise. So the James Beard nominations are out, and those every year acknowledge some of the best chefs, some of the best restaurants around the country. We reported this in our Hey Boise newsletter, and this year, 4 Idaho chefs have been nominated in the mountain region category. So we're up against like Utah, Colorado, Montana, Idaho. And Dan Ansatigi was nominated again for his Bass dishes from Ansat's in Boise. So he's the one Boise chef. Did you see the others, George? Did you look at the list yet?
I saw the list, and I have to admit that I'm not I haven't been a customer yet. I drooled all the way
Yeah,
through
right.
it. Um, yeah. So, Frankie, you know about this stuff. Can you talk to me? It seems as if the James Beard Award, I mean, they really get things right, don't they? They really,
Yeah.
they identify not only just under the radar chefs, but, chefs that we're going to be talking about for years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, how fun would it be to be the person who gets to, try these restaurants all around the country and then say this who gets nominated in this category and this is why. Yeah, and then to say the other 3 names actually, it's Salvador Alamia, who of
Hmm.
course we've had on the podcast before. He's the chef at Amano in Caldwell. We love Amano at CityCast Boise, and then another that I hadn't heard of, the Stanley Supper Club, which is apparently,
In Stanley, Idaho. Yeah.
yes, yeah, and fairly new on the scene, and it's run by Ben Harlow and Heather Logan. So 2 chefs for one spot, and I'm super intrigued by this.
I know. I mean, is it truly like a supper club? That would be
Yeah,
fascinating. And now I'm so jealous.
I know. I want to go to Stanley and try it sometime. And the food looks, of course, incredible, and their story seems very sweet. And I need to learn more about how this works. But I'm looking at their menu and what they have coming up. They have some dinner reservations and stuff available as of right now. It looks like, and I don't know. I think the supper club thing is definitely something we've seen in other larger cities. So how funny that they've got this little thing in Stanley that has been highlighted by a national organization. It's pretty cool.
Frankie, we had a story on Morning Edition the other morning. It was on the growing popularity of Korean restaurants,
Mm.
globally, certainly, but here in
Hmm.
North America. And a particular chef was talking about not necessarily being adventurous, but just doing what he thinks tastes good. But he talked about opening up a restaurant in New York, and the quote was, "Well, I love having a restaurant in New York because I don't have to educate the public. They will embrace just about anything as long as it's good." And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's interesting. But I instantly thought of Boise. It's like,
Yeah.
gosh, is that the case here? I mean, are we that? I are well, are we educated enough where something really, I don't know, like a real breakthrough experience would catch on? Because I
Yeah.
just keep seeing so many ambitious efforts fail.
Yeah, I did notice, and I guess they opened. I'm thinking about the Avery, right? The Avery
Yeah,
Hotel and the
yeah.
restaurant in downtown that took over the Ice Bouquet, the once known as Ice Bouquet bar in downtown, but has a longer history than that. And we talked with the chef Cal Elliott, who's a Michelin star chef from Boise originally, was one of those people who was in New York, making incredible food, and that's where he earned his Michelin star. and then returned to Boise, opened the Avery. And one of the things he did talk about, we discussed, like, is Boise ready for your inventive or not? And he was like, I don't even know if it's that inventive anymore, to be honest. The stuff that I'm trying, like, I don't think rabbit is that adventurous, but maybe Boise does. I don't know. So he was kind of discussing how excited he was to open something new that doesn't exist in Boise or hadn't up until they opened, at least in that same way, but was a little bit, trepidatious or curious to see how it would be taken, and if people would eat that food. And I think
it is about sustainability, right?
I think the tastes are starting to evolve a little bit, and that's good. But I still think there's definitely a lot of folks who find that, oh, I guess that dish didn't play well. Might need to find something that's a little bit more known, or find a connecting point with, like, oh, okay, well, maybe we'll. Potatoes. I don't know. I'm throwing out the most most generic, obvious one, but find a potato dish that people will really gather around, but put it in interesting context. I should say too, of course, last year we did have our first ever Idaho chef who won, and it was Boise chef Chris Kamori from Kin who won the James Beard Award in the mountain category. So we'll see if one of these chefs win this year.
So amazing when he took his staff. Right. And they were there and to share that moment. That was pretty amazing.
Up on stage in Chicago. Yeah, that was really cool. Very, very classy. Well, give me a movie to watch.
The Oscar nominations came out this past week. And I think more than a few people were surprised that Margot Robbie was not nominated for Best Actress.
This backlash was intense. Yes.
Right. And Greta Gerwig, which is the real problem, not being
the real snub. Yeah.
But Annette Bening was nominated for Best Actress for Naiad, and Jodie Foster was nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Naiad. It's a Netflix film. It is the true story of Diana Naiad, one of the most controversial extreme athletes of our time, and how she was a marathon swimmer, and she had, let's say, she had some issues with the truth sometimes, talking about what she could or what she did do. It's a great, great movie. It did premiere in Toronto, and that's where I got a chance. So I think a lot of people are thinking, Annette Bening and Jodie Foster. I might want to check that out. Definitely check it out. It's been on Netflix for a while, but I think this week it got a big, big boost.
Okay, I haven't seen it yet, so that I'm going to do it.
And by the way, have you heard of the new series In the Know?
No, what's this?
You're going to love this.
I'm not in the know about In the Know. Okay.
It is. It's going to be on Peacock. And the first episode drops this week. It comes from Mike Judge, who of course did Silicon Valley. In the Know is about the third most popular talk show on NPR. And you're thinking, hold it. What is that? It doesn't even try to, disguise what it is. Mm-hmm. And so it's stop motion animation, but the guests are real. So the guests are live. So you'll see like Hugh Laurie or, these other people. But it's got that wonderful, wickedly smart comedy from Silicon Valley.
Yes.
Obviously, I have a vested interest in this. And by the way, I think I've seen a few episodes. I'm thinking some folks at NPR aren't going to be thrilled at this.
Yeah.
But how could you not watch this?
Did they ask you for your life rights, George? Are you part of this production in any way?
It's so Terry Gross. It's so great, and it's in the know. But it's about this political correctness. And oh my gosh, I can't recommend. You got to check this out. It's called In the Know.
Okay, excellent. I can't wait. I can't wait to see people I know and love parodied probably in a show like this.
I mean, Saturday Night Live, it's been 20, 30 years since they did the famous Sweaty Balls.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, come on,
Sweaty
give
Balls.
us something new now. Yeah.
Okay, here it is. The runner-up to Sweaty Balls. Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Thanks so much, George. Really appreciate your time. And really given a lot of great insight this week. So have a good weekend.
You too, Frankie. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to CityCast Boise. This week, the show is produced by Evelyn Avitia, Grant Irving, Dylan Brogan, and me, Frankie Barnhill. Blake Hunter writes our Hey Boise newsletter with help from Brian Vance and Adrian Gonzalez this week. Our music is by local band Up As The Down Is The. We'll be back Monday with more stories from around the city. See you then.